You got a Game Girl headset.
Without much concern towards answering to any higher powers. JFK supposedly once said he wanted to, quote, splinter them into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the winds. So it's no surprise to me that the CIA would withhold information leading up to and after the events of September 11th. Remember the Al-Qaeda conference that al-Hazmi and al-Midhar attended in 2000 just before flying over to the US? Well, as it turns out, the CIA had the Malaysian government conducting surveillance during the meeting on their behalf and were actively tracking the two terrorists around the time they would have been meeting with Omar. Richard A. Clark, a former counterterrorism czar who worked for both the Bush and Clinton administrations, came forward with his allegations against the CIA in 2011. While he name-drops officials George Tenet, Cofer Black, and Richard Blee directly, he also claimed that closer to 50 officials in the CIA were responsible for not reporting the terrorists to the FBI and the State Department, despite multiple warnings. Had they been reported and placed on the State Department's terrorist watch list, the attacks could theoretically have been thwarted. Other such claims of information withholding by the CIA were made earlier in 2007, when a few former members of the 9/11 Commission accused them of destroying videotapes containing the interrogations of key al-Qaeda personnel. According to former executive director of the commission, Philip Zelikow, the panel made repeated requests for very detailed information about the interrogations, and that by not informing them about the tapes, they were violating the law. In both of these cases, much as we've seen before, nobody in the CIA was actually charged with anything, and these disturbing lapses in judgment and accountability were simply swept under the rug. P-TECH. P-TECH was a private software company focusing on business process modeling that had been contracted by the federal government within several agencies, including, but not limited to, the Armed Forces, the IRS, the FAA, the White House, Congress, the Department of Justice, the Secret Service, and even the FBI. It was believed that P-TECH had access to very sensitive information, seeing as how their clientele spanned across many branches of government. This would be a very big problem when in 2002, it was discovered that one of P-TECH's investors was a man by the name of Yassin Abdullah Qadi, who had met bin Laden in 1979 and had been declared a sponsor of terrorism in 1999. Due to these connections, theorists speculate that P-TECH could have acted as an involuntary intermediary between U.S. intelligence and al-Qaeda, with the terrorists using P-TECH systems to obtain sensitive government information in order to properly pull off 9/11. However, again, the truth is much more muddled and complex than that. While Qadi did indeed meet with bin Laden, he claims that the visit was wholly unremarkable and denied being a terrorist. He even went against the international courts, demanding that he be taken off of their terrorist blacklists, a case which he would eventually win in 2008. In addition, while P-TECH does work within various agencies in the United States government, there isn't evidence to suggest that the information each of them shared was interconnected between them all. Amidst the media frenzy, the company quickly reorganized itself and changed its name to Go Agile in 2003. The company's page now redirects to a website called Demandbase, which seems to serve more or less the same function as its previous iterations. NORAD drills. Before the first plane would even be taken over on September 11th, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, were conducting several drill exercises involving their fighter aircraft. Global Guardian is an annual drill held by NORAD and the United States Strategic Command, in which the military tests their procedures and commands in the event of nuclear warfare. This is held in conjunction with Vigilant Guardian, a separate exercise conducted by NORAD itself, where the scenario changes regularly. That year, according to the 9/11 Commission report, the scenario was planned to be, quote, a bomber attack from the former Soviet Union, which similarly coincided with planned bomber exercises from the Russian 37th Air Army. This ultimately created some confusion when the actual attack began, which you can hear on the famous air traffic control tapes.
We have a problem here. We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards New York, and we need someone to scramble some F-16s or something up there to help us out.
Is this real world or exercise?
No, this is not an exercise, not a test.
Meanwhile, at the National Reconnaissance Office, They too were conducting a drill in which they would simulate a plane crashing into their headquarters. No actual plane was to be used, but all training exercises within the US military were cancelled once the FAA had relayed the news of the hijacked aircraft. Some have argued that these war games took focus and precious fighter jets away from the chaos that was taking place on the East Coast. On the contrary, General Ralph Eberhart told the commission that it took as little as 30 seconds for everyone to adjust to the real-world situation, and that the drills actually made things faster because everyone was all in one place. Still, there are legitimate arguments to be made as to why fighter craft weren't scrambled to the area sooner. A document obtained from the 9/11 Commission details the training scenarios of Projects Global Guardian and Vigilant Guardian from 1998 leading up to September 11, 2001, and there are many instances where there was supposed to be training to deal with terrorist attacks or the hijacking of airliners. Again, this seems more like an act of incompetence rather than a deliberate act of sabotage. But it is interesting to speculate on just what may have happened if fighter aircraft had been able to reach the plane in time. Project for a New American Century. Do you know what exactly a think tank is? It's essentially a political nonprofit, a committee of researchers and advocates unified around a central topic, like social issues, economics, technology, and so on. Some can be wholly academic in nature, while others can be very biased and driven by political or corporate interests. This is one of the latter types of think tanks.
There's nothing to hide. We have nothing that's sort of nefarious behind what we do.
In 1997, the Project for the New American Century was founded by former Chief of Staff Bill Kristol and a neoconservative foreign policy advisor named Robert Kagan. The organization's motives stemmed from the fact that, in the opinions of Kristol and Kagan, the Republican Party had no clear foreign policy agenda. By developing a compelling plan, they could legitimize their complaints towards the Clinton administration. PNAC, as it began to be known, published numerous articles and opinion pieces calling for a return to an aggressive, neo-Reaganite approach to foreign affairs. They repeatedly called for regime changes in Iraq, the fighting and winning of, quote, multiple simultaneous major theater wars, and a general push for American dominance in the global market by maintaining a strong military presence. Many of the individuals who had signed their Statement of Principles in 1997 would later go on to hold office in the George W. Bush administration, such as Deputy National Security Advisor Elliot Abrams, Bush's younger brother Jeb, former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, and even Dick Cheney, Bush's VP. In 2000, the organization published a report titled Rebuilding America's Defenses. Project for a New American Century. Do you know what exactly a think tank is? It's essentially a political nonprofit. What exactly? Project for a New American Century. Do you know what exactly a think tank is? It's essentially a political nonprofit, a committee of researchers and advocates unified around a central topic, like social issues, economics, technology, and so on. Some can be wholly academic in nature, while others can be very biased and driven by political or corporate interests. This is one of the latter types of think tanks.
There's nothing to hide. We have nothing that's sort of nefarious behind what we do.
In 1997, the Project for the New American Century was founded by former Chief of Staff Bill Kristol and a neoconservative foreign policy advisor named Robert Kagan. The organization's motives stemmed from the fact that, in the opinions of Kristol and Kagan, the Republican Party had no clear foreign policy agenda. By developing a compelling plan, they could legitimize their complaints towards the Clinton administration. PNAC, as it began to be known, published numerous articles and opinion pieces calling for a return to an aggressive neo-Reaganite approach to foreign affairs. They repeatedly called for regime changes in Iraq, the fighting and winning of, quote, multiple simultaneous major theater wars, and a general push for American dominance in the global market by maintaining a strong military presence. Many of the individuals who had signed their Statement of Principles in 1997 would later go on to hold office in the George W. Bush administration, such as Deputy National Security Advisor Elliott Abrams, Bush's younger brother Jeb, former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, and even Dick Cheney, Bush's VP. In 2000, the organization published a report titled Rebuilding America's Defenses, which was seen by critics as advocating for total American hegemony. One section of the report became particularly notorious after the 9/11 attacks, which says, quote, further, the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. While the wording is fairly vague, many point to this as evidence that those in the Bush administration had been planning the events of September 11th for years. The report is indeed the epitome of the modern-day manifest destiny that many neoconservatives have adopted, but do I believe it's proof of an inside job? No, not really. Notice how George W. himself did not sign the Statement of Principles in 1997, nor did he contribute to the think tank in any way. Those members of his administration that were involved with it may have seen an opportunity for war and seized it, but I think it's disingenuous to say that this is conclusive evidence of deliberate collusion. It means basically that Bush was probably caught way off guard and was most likely manipulated into military action in Iraq by those who had a preconceived agenda, which is already what I believed anyway. So, nothing much has really changed. Layer 6. Ace Baker suicide hoax. During my research and compilation of video clips to use, I came across something I don't think I've ever heard another 9/11 focused content creator talk about. If you've watched those independent conspiracy documentaries such as Loose Change or In Plain Sight, you'll recognize the name of one Ace Baker. Baker was responsible for the film 9/11: The Great American Psy-Opera, where he has repeated the no planes in New York argument amongst several outlandish claims and pseudo-psychological banter that has no basis in logic. I am not the first to contest his findings either, as there have been several others who have called him out in the past.
Quite frankly, you seem to be in the grip of a delusion.
However, on January 6, 2009, while being interviewed by Jim Fetzer on The Real Deal radio show, Ace Baker would shock and alienate his fringe group of followers. After lamenting about not being around for his children due to the taxing work that being a 9/11 truther must entail, a gunshot sound effect is heard, Then silence.
But innovators in their fields are frequently unappreciated. My God, Galileo was prosecuted subjected to an inquisition, prosecuted by the church. Galileo, for God's sake. I'm coming home.
The implication is obviously that Baker committed suicide. Police were called to his house, but when they arrived, they found Ace alive and well. According to him, staging his death on live radio was a piece of performance art, which he elaborated upon in a statement on his blog. It's long and rambling, and he's so close to getting it. He's so close to putting the pieces together, but he just, for whatever reason, can't do it. Quote, "I give up trying to use scientific facts and reasoning on you people. Any sincere 9/11 researcher will eventually be driven to abject frustration. Why? Because most of the so-called leaders of the 9/11 truth movement are not the least bit interested in truth. I have authored the definitive scientific treatise on the video compositing used to create the 9/11 airplane videos. It has not, will not, and cannot be debunked. In fact, it is the solution to 9/11. Keep in mind that this is the same person who pushed the nose out theory that we debunked in Layer 4. He clearly wanted to get back at all the forums that banned him and the users who called him out by making a big deal out of his so-called performance art fake death. But I don't think anybody believed it for a second. I understand why he was banned in the first place. Mystery plane.
A white plane, a very big jet, was flying in unusual pattern near the White House.
Just before 10 a.m., a mysterious white plane was spotted in the skies above the White House by multiple news reporters, one of those being CNN's own John King, who called into the show to report on it. He even managed to capture it on video circling around what was usually considered to be restricted airspace. Despite being noticed by several, there never existed any official explanation. The 9/11 Commission report doesn't mention the plane at all, and sources from CNN stated that the matter was classified information. Later analysis of the video managed to identify the aircraft as an Air Force E-4B, a government-modified Boeing 747. Notice the similar stripe along the fuselage, the American flag on the tail, and the slight bump behind the cockpit indicative of the communications pod. Why the plane was flying around at that moment has still never been fully explained, but many theorists have speculated that it was used by U.S. government officials for nefarious purposes. Due to the fact that the plane's primary purpose is to keep the government running even from above, the theory goes that the E-4B was used as a mission control center to make sure the events went according to plan. After all, United 93 was just minutes away from crashing in Pennsylvania at the time the E-4B was spotted, and the Pentagon had been on fire for nearly a half hour beforehand. This can neither be confirmed nor denied for certain, as the United States government will probably never declassify that information. So for now, the mystery plane will continue to exist as an inexplicable anomaly in the 9/11 timeline. Urban moving and Mossad.
The FBI has now put out an APB in all points bulletin nationwide. They're looking for a white Chevy van. Written on the back is Urban Moving Systems.
According to the New York Times and Haaretz newspaper reports, multiple Israeli men were arrested in New Jersey after they were observed cheering on the destruction of the World Trade Center, dancing, and posing for photographs. The 5 men claimed they were simply tourists on a working holiday, and one of them even said to an officer, quote, "We are Israeli. We are not your problem. Your problems are our problems. The Palestinians are the problem." Within the van they were driving, police found $4,700 in cash, a map of the city with certain areas highlighted, and box cutters. Supposedly, they all worked as movers for a company called Urban Moving Systems. Once the men were turned over to the FBI, they discovered that at least 2 of the 5 men may have had connections to Mossad, the intelligence agency of the State of Israel. The FBI also questioned the owner of Urban Moving, Dominique Otto Suter, before he fled back to his home country of, you guessed it, Israel. Agents arrived at the place of operations to find it completely abandoned, with everything inside left behind. The FBI concluded after a 2-month investigation that the men, while they were here illegally, were not connected to Mossad, and all 5 of them were subsequently deported. 3 of the 5 men later allegedly appeared on an Israeli talk show and claimed, quote, "Our purpose was to document the event." Since then, it has been alleged that Urban Moving Systems was actually one of many front operations for Mossad officials to conduct surveillance on money being funneled to Hamas and similar groups. Is there any evidence of them having prior warning to the September 11th attacks? A little, but it's not conclusive enough. The main thing out of place here is their perceived happiness about the terror unfolding in front of them. However, an article appearing on thegrayzone.com offers an explanation. In case you don't know, the United States and Israel have a very close relationship with each other.
I think it's about time we stop apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made.
In Israel, acts of terrorism have been taking place since the state was founded in 1948, and previous talks of peace between them and the Palestinian Authority had recently broke down at the start of the millennium. Returning to a forever war mindset, many Israeli nationalists called on America to throw everything they could behind the Israeli front against the Arabs. So when America was attacked, those same nationalists expressed satisfaction that finally their biggest ally would actually do something to help them defeat the Palestinians they viewed as sworn enemies. This lines up with the "we are not your problem" statement said by one of the men upon their arrest, as well as what another would say later in FBI custody. Quote, "Israel now has hope that the world will now understand us. Americans are naive, and America is easy to get inside." Even the current Prime Minister of Israel himself, when asked about what 9/11 would do to American-Israeli relations, said, quote, "It's very good." Well, not very good, but it will generate immediate sympathy. He would echo these thoughts the same year in a private conversation that was secretly recorded. Quote, "I know what America is. America is something that can easily be moved to the right direction." Questionable behavior, yes, but it doesn't mean the state of Israel allowed the attacks to happen. Moreover, like its Western ally, it would seem those in power knew exactly how to exploit the tragedy for their own advantages. William Cooper prediction. William Cooper was an author and radio host best known for his groundbreaking 1991 book, Behold a Pale Horse, discussing various conspiracy theories including the existence of aliens on Earth, the supposed creation of AIDS as a weapon against gay people and people of color, and a centralized one-world government hell-bent on enslaving and controlling the populace. As far as conspiracy writings go, it was pretty influential for its time, with Cooper being referenced and mentioned by name in The X-Files and by many hip-hop artists like Jay-Z, Tupac, and Kill Army. Many high-profile conspiracy theorists also called themselves fans of Cooper, such as Alex Jones and Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh. Just before the attacks in 2001, Cooper had begun to shift gradually away from UFO phenomenon and began to discuss more anti-government